Deep in the meadow, there was an anthill. It was home to the Crimson Warriors. They were a brave and busy colony. Riko was one of the ants. He was small, but he had a big heart. Riko always wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to protect his home. He trained every day. He lifted heavy twigs. He ran very fast. One day, the Queen called a meeting. All the ants gathered around. They were worried. The Queen never called meetings unless it was important. What was wrong? The Queen stood on a high mushroom. She looked down at her colony. "My ants," she said. Her voice was serious. "We are in danger." The ants gasped. They had never been in danger before. "What is it?" one ant asked. "It is the Fire Beetles," the Queen said. "They are coming to steal our food." The Fire Beetles were fearsome creatures. They had hard red shells. They could shoot fire from their tails. The Crimson Warriors were scared. Riko stepped forward. "Your Highness," he said, "let me scout." The Queen looked at Riko. He was small, but his eyes were bright. "Very well," she said. "Be careful, Riko." Riko went out of the anthill. He followed the scent of the Fire Beetles. He had to be very quiet. He didn't want to be seen. He crawled under a leaf. He peeked out. The Fire Beetles were huge. They were talking and laughing. Riko listened closely. He had to find out their plan. Riko heard the Fire Beetles' plan. They were going to attack at sunset. Riko gasped. He had to warn the colony. He turned to leave, but he stepped on a twig. It snapped. The Fire Beetles heard the noise. They turned around. They saw Riko. "An ant!" one of them roared. Riko ran as fast as he could. The Fire Beetles chased him. Riko was small, but he was fast. He dodged and weaved between blades of grass. He finally reached the anthill. He was safe, but he was also scared. The Fire Beetles were coming. Section 5. Preparing for battle. Riko told the Queen everything. The colony was in an uproar. The Fire Beetles were strong, but the Crimson Warriors were smart. They could set traps. Riko had an idea. "We can use the leaves," he said. "We can make them into slippery slides." The ants all agreed. This was a good plan. They got to work. They carried water droplets. They made the leaves wet and slippery. They dug a pit under the leaves. It was a perfect trap. Section 6. Trapped! The sun began to set. The sky turned red. The Fire Beetles were coming. They marched towards the anthill. They were ready to attack, but they didn't see the trap. They stepped onto the slippery leaves. Whoosh! They slid down the leaves. They fell into the pit. They were trapped. The Crimson Warriors cheered. Their plan was working. But the Fire Beetles were angry. They started to climb out of the pit. Section 7. The Crimson Tide. The Fire Beetles were strong. They were almost out of the pit. The Crimson Warriors were outnumbered. But they wouldn't give up. They had to protect their home, Riko shouted. "For the colony!" The Crimson Warriors charged. They were like a red tide. They pushed the Fire Beetles back into the pit. The Fire Beetles were surprised. They didn't expect the ants to be so brave. They were confused and scared. Section 8. Victory for the Warriors. The battle raged on, but the Crimson Warriors fought with courage and cleverness. They used their small size to their advantage. They nipped at the Fire Beetles' legs. They made them stumble. Finally, the Fire Beetles gave up. They retreated. They ran away into the night. The Crimson Warriors had won. The ants cheered. They had fought bravely. They had protected their home. Section 9. Riko the Brave. Riko stood on top of the anthill. He was a hero. He had been brave. He had been clever. He had saved the colony. He had proven that size doesn't matter. The Queen patted Riko's head. "You are a true Crimson Warrior," she said. Riko smiled. He was proud to have protected his home and his friends. From that day on, Riko was known as Riko the Brave.